Ensonga y'abaana Kenya abawambiddwa mu Uganda ekutte wansi ne waggulu. Gwe n'ensonga eno aleta gifollowinga tuula bulungi otegere kati ki ekiriwo currently. Bana Kenya bavuddeyo ne bawa Museveni essaawa 12 zokka. Nga bana Kenya abawambiddwa ba activists ababiri ababadde ku rally ya His Excellency Kyagulanyi nga bayimbuddwa nga ate tebaliiko yadde kamogo nga tebaliiko yadde anything. Bagambye tebagala bannyonnyola, tebagala bigambo bingi, bagala balilizingibwe unconditionally. Oba sikyo bagenda kuralinga bannaabo okwotoola Africa, okwotoola ensi, bateekewo ensasage first of all ku embassies za Uganda. Like anyway, before I even go deeper into this, let me first give you this clip. Weewulireko Bobi nyini nga bali mu kwogera.
Tonight, to begin with growing outrage over the arrest and detention of Kenyan activists Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo in Kampala, Uganda. In a strongly worded letter to the Ugandan High Commission in Nairobi, the Law Society of Kenya, Amnesty International Kenya, and Vocal Africa are demanding the immediate release and safe return of the two. The groups have also called for a thorough investigation into the abduction, urging that those responsible be held accountable. Interior Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen has confirmed that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is actively engaged in the matter. Gatete Njoroge reports.
More than 24 hours after the abduction of activists Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo at a petrol station in Kireka, Kampala, Uganda, human rights organizations have voiced their concerns over the alarming cases of abductions and enforced disappearances in East Africa region. Law Society of Kenya, Amnesty International Kenya, and Vocal Africa, in a joint letter to Uganda High Commissioner in Kenya, Ambassador Eunice Kigenyi, have demanded for immediate release of the two. The organizations have further demanded for legal representation and communication with their families, while calling on the government of Kenya to ensure cross-border activism is not criminalized. They have called for probe on the circumstances of their abduction and demanded that those responsible be held accountable. Demands that were echoed by Free Kenya movement that Njagi chairs and other activists who are now threatening to mobilize activists across the world to occupy Uganda embassies.
We call for the release of our comrades, and they should come cross-border while they are still healthy. We do not want excuses, and from here we are going to organize and give our governments, that is East African governments, 12-hour ultimatum to release Bob and Nicholas Oyoo.
The circumstances surrounding the abduction raise serious concerns about safety of Kenyan citizens in Uganda and the potential collaboration between the Kenya and Ugandan governments.
Political opponents must not be harassed, tortured, or imprisoned for speaking out. We reject tyranny and we embrace the spirit of unity.
Interior Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen speaking.
I'm sure owulira engeri gye boogeramu, of course, bali more than determined to occupy Ugandan embassies across the entire planet. Nga badimandinga Museveni alelizinge banna Kenya bana babudakitingiddwa. Gwewe nawe n'emboozi ne yakagibaka right now ngenda kukuzayoko otegere bulungi waji byatandikidde and why we are at this point. But let's first finish this.
During the Jukwaa la Usalama Forum in Nairobi, confirmed that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is working to resolve it.
Like some of the Kenyans who went to neighboring country, I want to assure you that the Foreign Affairs Ministry is handling those issues, and everybody will be accounted for. It's the duty of the government of Kenya to protect its citizens in any part of the world.
However, Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi, who attended the burial of late Minister Dalmas Otieno, gave the abduction a wide berth, despite calls from leaders at the burial for the government to intervene.
Kuna Prime Cabinet Secretary hapa. Kuna Wakenya ambao wameshikwa huko Uganda. Tukimaliza hii burial, tunaambia Mheshimiwa Mudavadi apigie Museveni simu watoe hao Wakenya ambao wameshikwa.
National Unity Platform presidential candidate Bobi Wine has through his social media platforms condemned the incident and confirmed the two could have been abducted as a result of associating with him. The abduction of Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo in Kampala, Uganda has yet again raised concerns over increased cases of human rights violations in the East African region.
All right. Now, owulidde bulungi ba activists okwetolola actually bavudde mu groups ez'enjawulo, Amnesty International Kenya, Kenya Law Society, Vocal Africa, bafulumiza statement enkambwe ngerawo babulidde boogera ne mu statement yaabwe gye bafulumiza. Lwakisooka nembalaga bulungi muyinza okugamba JB, you are cooking up this. No, I'm not cooking up this. Read here. This is from Amnesty International Kenya. This is Vocal Africa, Kenya Law Society. Bade mpisayisaamu ndabe how they all are reacted. Nsanyuse nnyo okusanga something like this. Look at this. Now, this is an open letter on the abduction of Kenyan Bobi, Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo. There it is, of course, from a combination of Law Society of Kenya, Vocal Africa, and then Amnesty International Kenya. Nga bagidirectingirani, bagidirectingira Acting High Commissioner, Uganda High Commission to Kenya, Riverside Paddocks, Riverside Lane, Nairobi. Now, the Society of Kenya can actually kanjite bulungi nnyo otegere bulungi bye bawandiise here wadde nti bawulidde nga boogera, but let me also go through this obeere nga oli ku same page owulire demands zibakoze. The Law Society of Kenya, Vocal Africa and Amnesty International strongly condemned the reported abduction of Kenyan human rights defenders Bobi, Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo in Kampala, Uganda on Wednesday, 1st October 2025. The two activists affiliated with the Free Kenyan movement were reportedly seized by armed individuals believed to be Ugandan security operatives while participating in the campaign trail of opposition leader Robert Kyagulanyi, popularly known as Bobi Wine. Bobi Wine's campaign activities. Eyewitness accounts indicate that the activists were forcefully taken from a petrol station in Kireka, Kampala, in broad daylight and driven to an undisclosed location. Their mobile phones were immediately switched off and their whereabouts remain unknown. A third activist, who was briefly detained and later released, has expressed fear for his safety and uncertainty about the fate of his colleagues. This latest incident represents yet another alarming case in a pattern of abductions and enforced disappearances of East African activists, exposing the deepening crackdown on dissent in the region. Over the last year, human rights organizations have documented an escalation and a disturbing pattern of transnational repression and intimidation, targeting activists and opposition figures across East Africa. These incidents demonstrate a systematic and coordinated assault on civil society, media, and political opposition in East Africa. This is not the first time Bobi Njagi has been targeted. In August 2024, Bob Njagi and two brothers, Aslam and Jamil Langton, forcefully disappeared in Kenya for over a month after participating in demonstrations against economic policies. They were held in incommunicado, tortured, and later released. Since then, Njagi has reported continued surveillance and harassment, placing him at heightened risk. His re-abduction across the border in Uganda is therefore a grave escalation, and it signals the persistence of state-linked repression intended to silence those demanding justice and accountability. The Law Society of Kenya, Vocal Africa, and the Amnesty International Kenya call on the Ugandan authorities to immediately disclose the whereabouts of Bobi Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo and ensure their safety, well-being, release and return to Kenya. Number two, guarantee their right to legal representation and communication with their families. Investigate the circumstances of their abduction and hold those responsible accountable. Uphold the rights to freedom of expression, association, and peaceful assembly, which are protected under both Ugandan and international human rights. We further urge the Kenyan government to actively engage with Ugandan authorities to ensure the safe release of its citizens and to ensure that cross-border activism is not criminalized or violently suppressed. The Law Society of Kenya, Vocal Africa, and the Amnesty International Kenya will continue to seek the protection and release of Bobi Njagi, Nicholas Oyoo, their families, and all East Africans facing repression. That was the open letter on the abduction of Kenyan Bobi Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo. Of course, when you go, let me first actually take you back to here.
And across the border to Uganda.
Now, for those who don't know how this started, these brothers came all the way from Kenya to come and stand in solidarity with His Excellency Kyagulanyi Sentamu Robert the day he was in Buyende and Kamuli. That was on Tuesday. Yeah, if I remember very well. Of course, after the campaign trail, the following day, that is Wednesday, they were abducted. Watch this.
Where Kenyan activists Bobi Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo were allegedly abducted in Kampala by men believed to be security officials on Wednesday afternoon. The two had reportedly attended a campaign rally of the opposition candidate Bobi Wine, who is challenging President Yoweri Museveni ahead of the presidential elections in Uganda, adding up to the growing list of concerns of abductions in the region, which human rights and lobby groups say also adds up to the deteriorating state of democracy in the East Africa region. Here is Gatete Njoroge.
These videos recorded during Bobi Wine's campaign in Kamuli district, eastern Uganda on Tuesday, clearly captures Free Kenya Movement chairman Bobi Njagi on stage alongside Uganda's opposition leader, who is seeking to unseat President Yoweri Museveni. In other clips, Njagi is seen listening keenly to Bobi Wine and at times joining his entourage as they traversed rural areas. According to a friend who spoke to us on condition of anonymity, the activists left Kenya on Monday and drove to Uganda in the company of two Ugandans. Once in Kampala, the Ugandan companions went home, leaving the three Kenyans to link up with Bobi Wine's campaign. On Tuesday, they moved across Buyende and Kamuli with NUP leaders as they campaigned ahead of the 2026 presidential elections. But by Wednesday afternoon, the mission took a darker turn. The group had stopped at a petrol station to repair their car when everything went south.
Around 3 p.m., there are some guys who came with a van. Looked to be grey shade in color. People came out with guns, like there were 4 of them. So there was also a lady who was seated in front. They just took Bob and SSG Oyoo Ocheng, who is the Secretary General.
The witness who was in their company says he too was picked up but later released.
I told them that my car is not locked. I cannot maybe go to where I don't know, and then they asked me to just get out and then go and lock my car.
The gunmen sped off, and within moments, Njagi and Oyoo's phones were switched off. Alone and in the dark in a foreign country, their colleague has not reported the matter to authorities, fearing for his safety.
I don't know.
Of course, you can't report to any police because it is the police that sanctions all this.
Where Bob is, I don't know which police station he has been taken to. I honestly don't know where he is as we speak right now. I'm just stranded here.
The alleged abduction comes just 4 months after.
So, as we speak now, their phones are still switched off. They have not been in contact with any friend, lawyers, family, or any close associates. Chechi related by Amnesty International Kenya, Vocal Africa wamu ne Law Society Kenya okuvaayo n'eddoboozi ery'omwanguka n'okubeera nga bawadde Uganda 12 hours okulelizinga ba comrades bannaffe bano unconditionally because tebalina musango gwe bakoze like okutravelinga from Kenya to come and attend Bobi Wine's rally in Buyende and Kalilo. Ogwo musango ki? Manyi waliwo abantu abagala okwegeziwaza nakoze amawulire gano yesterday nembatirayo update eno nadde mpita ayita mu comment section nga mulimu abagala okwegeziwaza anyway ababeera baligimu apologists and beneficiaries nga muli abagala okwegeziwaza mbweno simanyi si Kenya no Uganda. So let me ask you, what's the purpose of the East African community? Otubanga tukeleiminga nti no it exists. Ng'omuntu wa travelings okuva Uganda, okuva Kenya okujja Uganda wambibwa. Then lwaki tulina amateeka? Kuba etteeka liraga nti anedda oba ogenda okwata omuntu mweyanjulire jayo ID ye nti yenze so and so nzize ku nsonga bwezi tubadde tukwagala. Ate in that context toyina na kubeera naye beyond 48 hours. Naye this is a country abasajja bajja nga beesibye obukookolo nga bali mu motoka teziriko yade number plate tebalina yade uniform gye bambadde nti bambadde kuliko tags nti bakuliko erinnya nothing. Golabula musajja yambadde kijini yambadde kisati akutte mundu ne bakuwamba ne bakutwala ne bakobozaawo. John Bosco Kibalama yawambibwa June on the 3rd 2019 up to date. Tewali n'omu yali azze mulabako. N'abalala bangi nnyo betusiiba tubanja. Kati kivudde ku bana Uganda crossing the borders. Now of course this is an intimidation tactic. Mujukire bulungi tino bana Kenya batuwagira nnyo. Bana Kenya lyerimu ku ggwanga nga His Excellency Kyagulanyi Sentamu bamusibidde Arua. Lyerimu ku ggwanga agavaayo ne gateekawo ekibuli kyali ky'amaanyi nnyo. Ne bagenda ku embassy e Uganda, ne bagenda mu bifo ebyenjawulo, ne bateekawo okwekalakasa kwali kw'amaanyi nnyo nga baagala gavumenti ya Uganda yimbule Bobi Wine. Museveni waliwo yagendako Kenya bali agenze for public lecture and that kind of a thing. Bro, kye baakola Museveni bamungola betolola university premises ne basooka bamungola we bakitegeera nti yali yakutaka zindalo mama. I replay for you that video for those who follow me on Facebook. Mujja genda mukalabe searching nzije Muwonge ku Facebook. Ka video yako njaka teka yon over the days. Yeah, ngenda kanonya nkateke because I have all that in my video archives. So lyerimu ku ggwanga akimanyi bulungi nti tayokyeza waka wabula homwandawe. Abanakenya tebamwagala, abatanzania tebamwagala, abakongo tebamwagala, abasudan tebamwagala. Kati akimanyi bulungi ensasage esobola okuva from all corners. Kati akimanyi nti wateekawo this kind of intimidation, abanakenya okujja okubeera nga basitandinga ni solidarity with His Excellency n'abawamba buwambi abeera nga asindikira sigina eri abasiga nti mugeza ne mukola ki ne mbwetanta ne tujja bawamba. Naye banakenya batiisatiisa babategeera bulungi. Bo abategeera bulungi. Baba no wano nga boogera. Babategeera bulungi. Wulire engeri gye bayogeramu.
Activists across the world to occupy Uganda embassies.
We call for the release of our comrades and they should come cross-border while they are still healthy. We do not want excuses. And from here we are going to organize and give our governments, that is East African governments, 12-hour ultimatum.
From here we are going to organize and give these governments an ultimatum of 12 hours. 12 hours.
To release Bob and Nicholas Oyoo.
The circumstances surrounding the abduction raise serious concerns about safety of Kenyan citizens in Uganda and the potential collaboration between the Kenya and Ugandan governments.
Political opponents.
So, now, gwe munna Uganda agala enkyukakyuka oyigamu ki mu kino? njawulo kijolabawo engeri gye tuli yakitingamu wano Uganda ng'omukufa awambiddwa n'engeri abana Kenya gye bali yakitinzeemu ng'omukuwaaba awambiddwa. Agatha Twaire yawambibwa Tanzania because it's actually kind of similar like Agatha yali agenze Tanzania kati bano bazze Uganda. It's the same kind of a thing like you know just bantu banjawulo ninga kikolwa kye kimu. What lessons do you learn from all this? Because like it or not, bano banakenya tebasobola kubackinga down nga Nicholas Oyoo ne Bobu Njagi nga tebatereddwa. Igwe muna Uganda yagala enkyukakyuka oyigamu ki in this kind of development, this update. Kicho oyigamu nze ngenda gifollowinga bulungi ngenda kuba nkufeedinga with each and every thing ekigenda okubeera nga kituuka paka we bana bakola kibana releasing because kitukwatako nnyo nti babadde ate bazze you know kuyimirira wamu ne his excellence Kyagulanyi Center but of course yavuddeyo dda naye n'akivumirira era you know his excellence yavuddeyo dda n'akola ki obubaka bwe yagambibwe strongly condemned the abduction by armed operatives of Kenyan activists and human rights defenders Bobi Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo. The two were picked up mafia style this afternoon from petrol station in Kireka and driven off to an unknown destination. We condemn the continuing lawlessness by the rogue regime and demand that these brothers are released unconditionally. The criminal regime apparently abducted them simply for associating with me and expressing solidarity with our cause. Nateka ebifaananyi byabwe. Yeah. Remember, ngenda kaddamu nga bwe nakawugedde eggulu, an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. Bwe kityo bwe kiri era bwe kino kuba beebo. So that is the update. Nkyagala mu following ennyo ensonga eno bannange. Ensonga lwaki mbawa updates about this issue. This is a very, very, very big thing. Njagala video mugitambuze nnyo mugipushing nnyo. Oli walabayo ka update kona maybe nga sinaba kafuna sikasindikire ku namba yange ya WhatsApp 0764 3777776. Tekako ene update jobo lengeddeyo iri ku WhatsApp. Kera bugenzi ku Facebook page ni namba je eri bulungi ku website www.jbmonge.com, contacts je ziri, email je ziri, byonna byonna osobola okukola kisobola okufuna eyo engeri gyo contactinga muno mpa any update gy'obeera ofunye ku nsonga kuba njagala ngifollowing bulungi nnyo nga sina na kintu na kimu kyenkola kye missinga paka nengeddeko ku nengeddeko wano. That is African news. Now you got reporting the Kamawulire gano. Kenyan activists reportedly abducted in Uganda while supporting Bobi Wine. Yeah, that is African news. Irana yo sightings. The Kenyan Law Society of Kenya, Vocal Africa, Amnesty International Kenya. Yeah, how they have teamed up. Nebawa Uganda esawa. Nebawa Uganda ne Kenya esawa 10 esawa 12. Yeah, it's gonna be some because it's gonna bite them. It's the same thing. Chemuwulidde era ne kyembasomedde ne wali mu open letter evudde mu ezo parties esatu ezitimize up naye nga kyembasaba bwe butalekerera nsonga eno. Yeah, ekutte wansi ne waggulu, ekutte wansi ne waggulu. Actually wogenda ku mukutu gwa Amnesty Kenya kwenzije open letter eno Amnesty International Kenya bakutereddewo chronology on report the abductions, arrest and torture between 2024 and 2025 nga muli ne yatuhaile Agatha mwe muli eyokubeera nga mujjukire on the 16th of November 2024 we bakwatira Besigye okumujja e Kenya in an act of national repression. Ugandan operation figure Kizza Besigye and Haji Obedi Lutale were abducted in Kenya and deported to Uganda to face treason charges in a military court, and up to date Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye akyali mu kkomera. Yeah. And then on the 23rd of July 2024, in an act of transnational repression, 36 members of Uganda's Forum for Democratic Change were abducted in Kenya and deported to Uganda to face treason charges. 2024, 2025 in Kenya, over 100 cases of forced disappearances have been documented, with some victims later found dead, bearing signs of torture. 27th Mugokuna Bidi mwaka guno gwenyini eri mutwe head of security for the Operation National Inter-Platform was abducted, held without communication and allegedly tortured. Agambo kano sikagala allegedly kubanga ebifaananyi bifulumye ng'omusajja alimpinga musajja bamukubi ebifaananyi ng'ali bikunyanga ali mu basement. CDF avuddeyo neyeewaako obujulizi nga wamwinira n'amuproducinga avuddeyo awonyere kati kana gambo kaba tekakola ki teketaagisa obeera nga agamba nti nno balimba Mugwokuna gwennyini omwaka guno nga 9 youth environmentalists were arrested in Kampala, charged under the common nuisance law for protesting funding for the East African crude oil pipeline. January 2025, 4 members of the Lubaga Social Justice Center were arrested for allegedly making derogatory remarks about General Muhoozi Kainerugaba and the First Lady Janet Museveni. They reported being abducted, held in Communicado in a safe house for 12 days, blindfolded, beaten, denied food and water during interrogations, and one individual reported the sexual harassment while in custody. May 2025, Kenyan activists Boniface Mwangi and Ugandan journalist Agatha Twaili were abducted in Tanzania while observing opposition leader Tundu Lissu's trial. They were reportedly tortured and disappeared for a period. Yeah, osolo gendayo article nayo nogikola ki nogipushinga far and wide because exposure eyamba nnyo when it comes to anyone being abducted. Buli muntu wabera abducted ne tutavaayo kubeera nga tuteekawo awareness, omuntu oyo asobola okubula forever. Mubalabe baganda ffe batubuzeeko bayitirivu nnyo. N'owulira omusajja n'ayogera mbu simanyi baagenda bweru, n'omuntu n'owulira n'ogaba balya mmere kitugimma abaana, ng'olabira ddala ng'omusajja ali insensitive, n'ayogera with the talina yadde ali mostless, ali omutunulira bw'oti uyinza n'okwebuuza naye alina abaana like addayo ewaka omukazi n'amukulisaayo nti mwami kulikayo from work, and those are the people at the helm of this country's leadership. That's how deep we sunk in the mess. A mess that this generation has to correct. And that's none other than getting rid of this leadership. Kuvira dala from the top to the bottom. Apart from that, all this bigenda kubera bikyaliwo. This facade of Simanyi East African because of it Simanyi community. That is absolute nonsense. That is absolute nonsense. Tebiriwo. Biriwo bitya. Baganda bange. Abawangalira mu nsi ez'enjawulo. Dubai, South Africa, United Kingdom, America, Canada, wherever you are. Mwegendereze nnyo Kenya. Kenya is not safe. Tanzania is not safe. Rwanda is not safe. Congo is not safe. Sudan is not safe. Especially bubango yagala kudda waka in a Robert style. Kikole mu ngeri ndala naye. Mu ngeri endala ennyo ogitegedde gyengezaako kola ki. Ba activists abatambula ekyo baba kitegeera setaaga kunnyonnyola nnyo. Of course, this is the JB Muwonge Talk Show. Go na atanaba kufuuka member wa platform eno. Osobola tulekera subscription, uteekeko ne notification alerts, obeere nga tomissinga kintu na kimu. Next time. Peace and love. Till next time.